What's up, guys? My name is Zack, and for the last 2 weeks, I've been driving the 2024 Toyota Tacoma TRD off-road. Up front is a 2.4-liter turbocharged inline-4, and down below is an 8-speed automatic transmission. Now, I am super excited to be making this video because I've spent the last 2 weeks driving this as my daily driver, so I have plenty of thoughts. It is the longest press loan I've ever had here on the channel so far. I've done a lot with this truck, and so I'm excited to share all of those stories, those trials, those tribulations with you here today, as well as we will be talking to an expert later on about if this 2.4-liter turbo will be reliable or better than the outgoing V6. But if you would like to submit your own vehicle, you can head on over to my website, zackpradel.com/submit. It's a quick and easy submission form. It takes under a minute to fill out, and I come out to you. But let's get back to that 2.4-liter turbo under the hood. Well, that is the standard drivetrain here in the new generation of Tacoma. The last generation had a standard either 2.7-liter inline-4 or, of course, the 3.5-liter V6 that we've all come to know and love. Now, this puts me on edge a little bit. The fact that it is only 4-cylinder turbos here in the new Tacoma, even the hybrid version is just a hybridized version of this drivetrain. There is no V6 offered at all anymore. However, in my time with it, I've really enjoyed the power. I never felt like I was at a big deficit or lacking in any way. And so from where I'm sitting in the last 2 weeks I've spent with it, I've been pretty happy with the 2.4 turbo. But like I said, we're going to talk to a close friend at the end of the video to give better insights on the engine, so stick around for that. Like I said, paired to it is an automatic transmission. It is an 8-speed, and it's fine. Again, doing the job. I don't have any complaints about it. It wasn't wobbly, it wasn't screechy, it wasn't anything like that during my time with the truck, and that is always good to hear. You can still find Tacomas with a manual transmission at the very, very bottom in the SR trim level. If that's something you still want to seek out, it is an option, but if I were a betting man, I would bet that that won't stick around for too much longer. Last but not least, of course, the TRD off-road is 4-wheel drive standard, and we'll talk about some of the goodies that go along with that. How does it feel to drive the 2024 Toyota Tacoma TRD off-road? It's a good driving experience. I really, really like it. It's big. The Tacoma used to be a little truck, as seen here, this 1997 that I drove. It was just a little truck. They've gotten very big. This is the size of 1500s from the early 2000s, which is what I grew up driving, so I felt very at home. But if you are looking for a truck, trucks are just very, very big now. Sort of the run-of-the-mill. In terms of steering feel, throttle response was all pretty decent. There were a couple times where I'd put my foot flat to the floor and it would take a couple seconds to figure out what gear it wanted and for the boost to build, so there were some laggy parts, but again, you're not buying this to show off on the drag strip. You're using this truck for tools and errands and truck stuff, and so I don't think you're really worried about that throttle response too much. Fuel economy isn't stellar. I've averaged 19.9, so we'll call it 20 miles to the gallon. It is a 4-cylinder turbo and a pretty big truck, so you're not going to get great fuel economy out of this. With that stuff out of the way, let's talk about the interior, because boy, do we have a lot to talk about in here. We'll start off with the digital gauge cluster in front of me. I do like this. It is pretty customizable. However, the customization of it is a little bit annoying. You have to hold the OK button on the steering wheel to select your individual gauges, but then you can have 3 presets. So I guess that does make it easier, as you could slide through 3 presets. If you know you want off-road stuff, you could set up an off-road gauge cluster and then just have that at the ready to swipe over to, but the overall functionality of it is a little bit annoying to get used to, but once you're used to it, you're fine. On the steering wheel, on the left, we do have our controls for that gauge cluster screen, as well as our back button, phone options, volume, and voice commands. And off to the right, we do have our adaptive cruise along with steering assist, which was very, very nice on the highway, which I will outline a little bit later on. But I did take a lot of road trips in this truck, and it worked out very well. The overall steering wheel is nice. We do have perforated leather, and it's a hefty upgrade over the SR5 that I reviewed back in March. Off to the left, we do have a climate control vent, and then we have our headlight levelers, gauge dimmer switch, automatic high beams, traction control off, our AC 120 volt outlet on and off, our tailgate up and down, auxiliaries 1, 2, and 3, so you can hook this up to whatever you want, and of course our rear cargo light. Moving out of the door, we just have our power mirrors, power locks, and power windows. Moving up into the center, we have our JBL speaker. So it's really cool. I actually got to spend 2 weeks with this, and this is one of my favorite little additional gimmicky things of the new Tacoma is that there is a speaker for the JBL sound system up on the dash, but if you hit a button, you can actually pull it out, and it's its own Bluetooth speaker. So you pull up to the lake, you pull your little boat, put it in the water, grab your JBL speaker, bring it on the boat, and now you have music. I think this is so cool. It does have a USB-C port, which I believe will allow you to charge it independently. And I think years down the road, when these are in junkyards in 10, 15, 20 years, or heaven forbid someone wrecks one and they're in a junkyard, I think these are going to become very collectible, much like the Pontiac Aztec cooler center console or other weird gimmicky stuff like that. This also does have a digital rear view mirror. So if you want to use a traditional rear view mirror, you can, but it also does have a camera rear view mirror, which does make life a lot easier, especially if you have people in the back seat. You don't have to look through their heads. Down into the center, we have this giant infotainment system. This has been the centerpiece and the talking point. Anytime someone got in here, I would just hear, "Whoa, that's a big screen," and they weren't wrong. It is a very large display. Wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and other than that, pretty typical run-of-the-mill Toyota system. Now, the lower trims actually do have a smaller screen, as seen here in the SR5 that I reviewed earlier this year. So you do have options. If you do get a lower trim Tacoma, you will get a smaller screen, if that's what you want. We do have a bunch of camera views that we could take a look at as well, which that is a big advantage of having the bigger screen, is that you can really keep an eye on your cargo while moving with this giant screen. Down below that, we have our volume knob and our climate control vents, and then our climate controls. We have a heated steering wheel, heated and ventilated seats, as well as dual zone climate. Absolutely love all of this except for the hazard switch. The hazard switch is really far away from the driver, and so it's one of those things that I don't think many people really familiarize themselves with when they buy a new car, but there was a motorcyclist in my town that was struggling to get the bike going. They kept stalling it. I assumed that they were a new ride or something like that. So I thought, okay, I'll throw my flashers on, get behind him so no one rear ends this bike. It was dusk. And so I pull it behind the guy, and I couldn't find the hazard switch. Normally they're around the steering column or somewhere close to the driver, and from where I sit, it's hard to see it around the volume knob. And so the biker just thought I was like getting on his butt for some reason. So he was like trying to wave me by, and I was like, no, I'm here to try to protect you from getting rear-ended by someone. And so it was just kind of an annoying thing, and it's something that you never think about until you absolutely have to. So I wish that the hazard switch was a little bit closer to the driver, a little bit easier identifiable. Down below, we do have a wireless charger and some great cubby space. And then we have the shifter. I like the shifter. It does say TRD on it, and it works really well. Very clicky. And off to the left, we have our power parking brake, brake hold, four-wheel drive settings, our tow haul mode, drive modes, crawl mode, and MTS. So for drive modes, we have normal, sport, and eco, which is pretty standard for modern vehicles. Then we have a couple of interesting buttons for the trailer backup guide, which is really nice. Our camera view button, which will toggle a couple different views that we could look at. Again, super helpful. Our rear differential lock and our electronic stability bar connections down below. Then we have cup holders. We'll do a big freaking bottle test, but just like the SR5, the TRD off-road also fails. Nothing new there. Then we do have a center console, nothing really going on in there, and then we'll talk about the seats. The seats are comfortable, they're heated, ventilated power. However, they are not the TRD Pro seats that are coming later this year that have the weird suspension in them. These are just standard seats, and so I don't mind them too much. However, speaking of seats, we do have back seats, so let's go do a back seat review. All right, so we're in the back of the 2024 Toyota Tacoma TRD Off-Road, and a couple of things to note. It's not very spacious back here. My knees are getting jammed into the seat in front of me. However, as I'll talk about later on, I actually had 4 full-size adult men in this truck for several hours, and I didn't hear any complaining, which was certainly very nice. I do have cup holders back here. I have a wall outlet, an AC 120-volt outlet back here, as well as 2 USB-C chargers. No center console, however, we will talk about the seats for a second here because you can fold them up. There's storage under the seats, but also it's really helpful for loading larger items. Again, I'll talk about this a little bit more later, but really cool to see this feature in the back of the Tacoma. Let's hop out. We'll talk about the bed and cargo space, and then we'll talk about the looks. All right, so we're on the back of the TRD Off-Road Tacoma from 2024, and a cool party trick here is you press and hold, and it does have a power-operated tailgate, which I absolutely love. As you guys will have seen on the channel a little while ago, I reviewed a Tesla Cybertruck that has a power-operated tailgate, but that does not go back up. This, you hit this button on the side of the taillight and it is power right back up, which is great because that's always the hardest thing to do. Anyone can get a tailgate down. Getting a tailgate back up can sometimes be tricky, and we do have a button on the other side as well. So no matter what side you walk up to the truck with, you can put the tailgate down. Once we are back here, we do have a wall outlet back here as well. Very nice to see that. And funny enough, we actually have USB-Cs and a 12-volt outlet along with the fuse for it right back there as well. Tie downs inside the bed, down below too. You're gonna be able to secure your load any which way, which is very nice to see. This also does come with the Tacoma mat, but there is the standard bed liner, and overall there it is. I'm sorry, I'm getting eaten alive by gnats, but press and hold here again, and it will fold up the tailgate. Absolutely love that feature. Huge for the TRD Off-Road Tacoma. Now we gotta talk about the looks, and I actually really like the look of the new Tacoma for a couple reasons, but we'll do a walk around. This one is finished in Blue Crush Metallic, which I think is a pretty nice color, and I got quite a few compliments in the last 2 weeks on it, so I think it does look good. Overall, I think the styling was done really well. I think it looks a little bit more aggressive than the outgoing model, but not being overly aggressive or looking fake or silly or anything like that. So I think Toyota did a really good job. However, one thing I do want to point out is that the TRD Off-Road gets some added skid plates underneath, and it takes away that giant ugly front splitter that the other ones had. So this actually looks a lot better at the front end, in my humble opinion. But now, with all of that being said, let's get on to my final thoughts. What do I think, having driven the Toyota Tacoma TRD Off-Road for the last 2 weeks? Well, I've absolutely loved it. I really have enjoyed my experience here. This truck can do pretty much anything you ask it to do, and I think the TRD Off-Road is the trim level that I would do. There is the limited trim level that is a little bit higher, and I like that. However, for a truck, I want it to be more trucky, not more luxury, and the limited sort of pushes that a little bit more luxury. I like the truckiness of this. Anything I asked this truck to do, it did it. I am actually in the process of moving. By the time this video comes out, I will have moved houses, which is very exciting, but as anyone who's moved houses would know, it's very stressful. I've been tossing furniture in the back, clothes in the back. We went out and got a desk in the pouring rain, which was super helpful to put the seats up in the back. We fit an entire computer desk in where the back seat is with the back seats folded up, and so it didn't get wet because it was made out of wood and it would have warped and it would have been terrible. It's also a great vehicle for shuttling your friends around at a bachelor party at medieval times. I'm not kidding. This was my bachelor party shuttle for my friend's bachelor party who's getting married probably around the time this video is coming out. And it was great. We had 4 people in here. It's very, very good and agile at pulling over when your friends have to puke. Don't worry, Kurt and Toyota. They didn't puke in the car. I promise you. We're all good. The power tailgate was super helpful when we were loading a cooler into the back because I just double tapped the key fob and walked out to it and it was already down, got in the car, didn't have to touch anything. It made loading all of our gear for the weekend super, super easy, and it's just been great. I really, really have mad respect for this truck. It did everything. And so honestly, I really do love it. But before we end the video, I want to circle back to that idea of reliability, and so I wanted to call on a friend. And that friend is Ahmed from the Car Care Nut channel. So I have a question for you. How are you doing? Also, congrats on 1 million subscribers. Absolutely
Thank you so
awesome.
much. Thank you.
Very jealous of the gold plaque. This is the 2.4. Hey, I'll buy it. I'll gladly buy your gold plaque. This is the 2.4 liter turbo in the new Tacoma. It's replacing the 3.5 liter V6 of the outgoing generation.
Yes.
Is this a good engine? Should I be worried about it? Is it reliable? Or would you recommend sticking with an older Tacoma with the 3.5?
I think this is an open-ended question. We can look at it from 2 perspectives. So let's do that. I was around when the outgoing model came out, 2016. I had a lot of sleepless nights in 2016 because of the 16 Tacoma. The V6 in the Tacoma is actually not the best version of a V6 that I would call. I think the V6 before it was even better, or better yet, the V6 from the 4Runner was actually the ultimate V6. The V6 from the previous Tacoma, they've had a lot of issues at the beginning. Granted, they got a lot better, but it was not exactly the hottest V6 in the planet. This engine, however, it has everything going for it to be good or closer to great, except it's put in a truck. It's a different orientation. See, this engine came out initially in 2023 in the Highlander, a version of this engine, in the RX, even in the NX, and now you're seeing it. Basically, every car that has a V6 now has this engine. Equally, every car that has a V8 has the V35. This engine traces its roots from a good engine. The A25A, been around since 2018. I think the engine mechanical itself, design-wise, I think it's a good engine. Now, the turbo part, that really depends on many things. Depends on, did the supplier do everything that Toyota asked them to do, and did things go well? We won't know that, just like the Tundra had issues at the beginning. You won't know that until there's some miles on these cars. The other thing is, any turbo car will not be as reliable as a non-turbo car, even if it's built by the best suppliers in the world, simply because if we take everything out of the picture, there's one more component that's going to wear out.
Exactly.
And actually, it's not just one. There's like a million other things. And typically, forced induction engines are pushed. You took a normal engine, you're not letting it breathe on its own, you're kind of forcing it to breathe. So there's always more load on turbo engines. But I just made a video on my channel talking about categories of car companies. Toyota is super conservative with their stuff. I mean, sometimes it works against them, like the BZ4X. It's a horrible electric car because they're conservative. Same thing here. You notice that they're the last people to turbocharge their cars. Everybody has turbocharged their cars at this point almost, but Toyota. I am hoping they're following the regular recipe, and I see the things. I see the usual recipe. They're doing things right. They're not plastic everything and cheapo stuff. But still, I guess the biggest contributing factor going into a truck that has a four-cylinder is going to be, are you willing to take care of it, Toyota owners? I meet you every day here. We have great talks. But problem is there's kind of a precedent out there. Oh, I own a Toyota. We're not going to take care of it. It'll be fine. You can abuse it a little bit. You can kind of neglect the maintenance. It'll be okay. We can't do that anymore with these engines.
Right.
These engines are already at their limit. You can't go modifying them. You can't go neglecting the maintenance. And whatever you do, please, sorry, we're going to detour. We're going to hijack your video for a second.
Please do.
Don't do the 10,000-mile oil changes. There is not a single mechanic or powertrain engineer you talk to, they'll tell you, oh yeah, it's a great idea. It's not.
Shorter
Leave
intervals,
it at that.
right?
Whatever the interval from the manufacturer
Okay.
is, cut it in half.
Okay.
Literally.
Okay. One more question for
Yes,
you,
sir.
actually. I just thought of it. 87 octane. It's what they run off 87. How do you feel about a turbo car running 87? Do you think it's fine? Or like, if this were your truck, would you be putting premium in it when you can?
I would trust the manufacturers when they tell you put 87 in a car, because they didn't just wake up one morning and decide let's put 87. They do a lot of testing. And the biggest problem with putting 87 in a non-premium car is you'll have predetonation, or this fuel will be too volatile where it will ignite where it's not supposed to. Premium fuel, having the higher octane, is going to be less volatile, meaning it's going to behave when the conditions are tough. Tough meaning high temperature, high compression, forced induction, which is what this is. But when they tell you that we tuned this engine to run at 87, that means they have the safeguards in place. Should there be wear and tear, you're okay at 87. Now, is it ideal? Some manufacturers will actually tell you, you can use 87, but for optimum performance, put premium. Usually those are the turbo engines. If you see that, put premium. Because putting 87 for the warranty period is great, but we're trying to keep this truck long.
Right.
And that's the rewarding of optimum performance. That means if you want to keep this truck long, put premium, please.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
I always appreciate the insights.
Good. You got it.
Huge thank you to Toyota for loaning me this Tacoma for the last 2 weeks. It was absolutely awesome because we actually used it to tow my Ford Model A up to Road America for the Mama Spring Rally. So huge thank you to them, as well as, of course, Drive Shop for facilitating the cleaning, delivery, and operation of this vehicle. They've been wonderful, and they towed my Model A up to Road America, which was fantastic. And, of course, the Midwestern Automotive Media Association for not only connecting the dots, but hosting the Mama 2024 Spring Rally, of which we use this vehicle at. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, and subscribe if you really liked it. Take care, guys.